Hello guys, according to the official Russian media, 150 drones from Ukraine have visited Russia today to do the job, to demilitarize the evil empire, and to provide us with enough high-quality materials for the next Russian geography lessons. And today we will visit Bryansk, Oryol, Belgorod, Kursk, Moscow, Vladimir, Ryazan, Tula, Kaluga. Just think about that. Dozens of Russian regions are now an active war zone, and all because Putin and his population like the idea. I wonder, do they like this idea on their own territory? Please, someone inform President Trump that Moscow is no more a fly zone because three of their major airports were paralyzed. Yes, because of the inexpensive Ukrainian drones doing a very important and very expensive job. So let's discuss what objects were demilitarized today inside Russia and what serious problems they now have literally every week with their airlines and airports. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and I'm proud to be Ukrainian in this world of weakness, indecisiveness, and betrayal. Subscribe to see the collapse of the Kremlin that is definitely coming. Together with the Ukrainian drones that keep demilitarizing Russia in dozens of their regions. Something that seemed totally impossible at the start of the invasion became new Russian reality. And I love reminding this fact that in 2022, Russia controlled more of the Ukrainian territory than it does now. But Russia also controlled more of the Russian territory than it does now. Because parts of Kursk and Belgorod regions are controlled by the Ukrainian forces, and most importantly, Ukrainian drones keep visiting dozens of Russian regions to demilitarize their evil objects. Russians are lucky, we follow the rules of war and only target their legitimate objects. Today I will tell you more about a semiconductor device plant in Oryol region that was neutralized tonight, but let's start with my favorite topic, and that is Russian airports. Many of them were paralyzed as Russian air defense could not track or stop Ukrainian drones. They say 150. Personally, I believe there were fewer, but I don't mind as long as they successfully accomplish their tasks. So Russians had to close their airports not only in Moscow, but also in some other cities like Yaroslavl, like Kostroma, and also Kaluga. But of course, my favorite spot that was paralyzed is Moscow. And there, Russians had to close three airports, that is Domodedovo, Sheremetyevo, and Zhukovsky. Of course, Ukrainians do not target civilian aircraft. That is what Russians do. And we remember many examples of that alone should have been enough to totally isolate Russia from the civilized world and never phone Putin. But we live in a crazy world, and sometimes I feel it is the task of the Ukrainian army to normalize this world and return it back on the track. So in Russia, they closed a lot of airports, but three in Moscow. For Putin, any problems in Moscow is a nightmare because all this large, enormously big, monstrously Frankenstein-like Russian Federation is very passive. It's really difficult to reach the media, to reach the Kremlin, and only Moscow and St. Petersburg are the cities that Putin's regime care about. These are the only cities that can actually demonstrate some serious protest and inspire, no, not the revolution in Russia, I don't believe it's possible, but they can inspire Putin's mafia colleagues, for example, to organize a coup or at least to cause some problems, as, for example, Prigozhin did. So Putin does not want any problems in Moscow or St. Petersburg. He is very much afraid to conscript people from these locations, so he keeps destroying various ethnic groups in distant, peripheral, depressive regions of the Russian Federation, but never touches Moscow. Ukrainian drones, while flying to other locations, because once again we target only legitimate objects, still paralyze Russian airspace. And when they close this airport, you have to realize that these are hundreds and thousands of very important people, because in Russia it's not common for ordinary middle-class citizens They actually don't have middle class to travel by plane, and these are various businessmen who remain paralyzed in that airport, understanding that not everything goes according to the Putin's plan, and even Trump won't be able to save the situation. Remember to like and share if you agree, and it's so important to spread the truth around the world when from the White House you literally hear Russian narratives. So we may officially say that Russia is a no-fly zone. Long ago, they should have banned any civilian airplanes on the territory, above the territory, because they are at war, and war is finally back home to Russia where it belongs. In Ukraine, we have only military aircraft. The same, well, should be now in Russia because it is dangerous. First of all, because we often visit them with drones to demilitarize, and it's always bad for the airspace. Second, because Russians are really bad with their own air defense. And literally, if at least one drone is flying in your country, it's better to wait until it does the job. And also another pretty undermined fact is that Russians desperately need the maintenance of their worn out airplanes. Sanctions did work here, and one of the first requests that the Kremlin made to Trump was to lift the sanctions from their aviation because they need that maintenance. There are also news that recently Poland stopped smuggling of a lot of details for Boeings in Russia, thus making the situation even worse. And one good Ukrainian vlogger recently named Russian airplanes flying coffins because there are hundreds of cases when they have to land because of the emergency caused by this lack of maintenance. And what they do right now, they actually take details from older aircraft, put them into the newer aircraft, not taking enough care whether they actually fit. So any sane person that cares about his or her life won't fly Russian airlines. And I hope sanctions will continue, and even if Donald Trump tries really hard, he will fail. And most importantly, a very good, very dangerous, very evil military object was neutralized in Oryol region. It is vital for a number of other Russian military plants because it produces semiconductor devices. And you know that modern war is very different from the one that NATO was preparing for. That is another evidence why not just Ukraine needs NATO, but NATO also needs Ukraine. And I'm happy that more and more decision makers in Europe repeat that, especially looking at what is happening in the United States. So we see that Oryol semiconductor device plant was able to produce approximately 3 million different gadgets per year. Now it will be paralyzed for a long time, and it supplied the production of Iskander missiles, Kinzhal missiles, and Sukhov aviation plant, the one that maintains and produces Sus. So by targeting this location, we actually paralyze a number of others in the chain. I love how creatively we work in this context of total betrayal. It was disgusting to watch once smart and honest Marco Rubio unable to say that Putin is a war criminal. I know he's trying to remain in this close circle of Donald Trump, but when you betray yourself, you can never succeed. Trust me, I know what I'm saying, and I always choose my values, my dignity before anything else. Because it's super important to preserve the things that actually make you that kind of human being you are. And maybe he thinks he can trick Trump. Maybe he thinks there will be a moment for him. No, he is lost, and that is very ugly to watch. And I hope in this case that you share my opinion. Let me know in the comments below, do you agree that Putin is a war criminal, or are you afraid of saying this phrase too? I don't think so, because we are strong and truthful people. And I'm very honored to announce that we start a new NAFO campaign with 3 amazing patches. One actually depicting me in a very cartoon-like style. And soon I will tell you more about the campaign. We are going to fundraise for 3 really strong, real combat units, providing them with the necessary trucks and, of course, drones, because drones are doing the job that I have just told you about and provide us excellent material for our favorite geography lessons. Do check the fundraiser and be among the first one to bring this good news and support the campaign. This means the world to me. Also, remember to follow me on X, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, on Threads, and we have an amazing Discord community. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel. That's a blessing and an honor. Check our merch shop for lots of good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine. And thank you for standing with us. Slava Ukraini!